Welcome to the Get It Done podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Ryan. Today we are interviewing Casey Knowles. Let's get it done. All right, the Get It Done podcast is sponsored by Team Get It Done. And today we're interviewing Casey Knowles. He is a producing branch manager for Ticket Mortgage. He is the star of Relo Elo, a up-and-coming show that I'm just super pumped about. I can't wait for the next episode. And but here, I know him also as a proud father of four and a husband as well. Casey, welcome to the Get It Done podcast.
Hey, I appreciate you having me, Jimmy.
For sure, brother. And hey, I'm really pumped to interview you. We were talking a little bit before we hit record that, some of the things that you do really well, and I think that Nick Carpenter does as well, as agent attraction. A lot of times in our industry, we're, so focused on, calling 40 realtors on a Monday type of a thing. And look, there's some value to that. And I'm not knocking people that do that. I don't think that that's wrong. Don't get me in a different way, but the way you guys go about it is really something that's quite different. And on the show, Relo Elo, the concept is that you're basically going to a brand new market and you have 90 days to close $2 million. And I think that's so cool. Like, I'm a fan. I'm a fan just simply because of that. And then, the intro, the little teasers with you being like, okay, there's 3 people in this room. What's going to happen? And anyway, brother, I want you to speak a little bit to that. What's it been like to be the star of a show?
Oh, well, certainly interesting. The camera time for me has never been a thing. So just to back up on as far as doing that, when I came to Colorado, I'd already been doing loans for 16, 17 years. And I tried really hard to get business going here. And I'm a pretty hard worker. And when I came here, I was having absolutely zero success. And so Nick is just a master of retargeting and the attraction thing that you spoke about. He does it, for himself. And so I was attracted to him and his marketing. I threw caution to the wind. I actually sold my truck to pay for like an upper level of the Legion and left ourselves with one family vehicle. And I called him. I said, man, I'm going to throw some cash at this. Like, you better be legit. And in my first year, I did really, really well. My first 12 months after joining, Scotsman's Guide Plus. And so that was pretty fantastic. And I just really appreciated the fact that he gave me away. He just said, look, if you do this, it'll work. And that's only happened a few times in my life where somebody actually has something for sale. And if you complete it, it's like a guaranteed thing. And so wanting to do that again, obviously we're wanting to build a company and help other people. The idea was, hey, look, let's do it again, but we'll do it under camera. So, so everybody, so it's transparent, like watch and do it. And so that's kind of how it wasn't the fact that I ever wanted to be on a TV show, but I was willing to do it to support him and because he helped me out. I mean, I was living behind Walmart and it was a kind of a rags to riches kind of story. And, myself and a couple other people, we did 100 million in our first year as a company, which pretty solid. And I just owed it all to his, the agent attraction thing. And so we did it. We shot a TV show, tried 90 days and used the exact same thing, but we tweaked it. And now that the show's over, we'd probably tweak it a little bit again. So it's been a learning curve and pretty awesome.
So many places I can go with that. Casey, I loved all of that. So I want to go back to where you were talking about Lolo, Legion of Loan Officers. You're mentioning throwing some money at it. I'm assuming that's the cabal.
Yep.
And for those that don't know, that's Nick Carpenter's. Really, it's the inner circle. It's the upper level of Legion. And you'd mentioned that, look, twice in my life I bought into something where it actually worked out. I think that a lot of us, as loan officers, as real estate agents, financial planners, insurance agents, that type of field, we a lot of times have this AAA personality where we think anything's possible, and therefore we're very easily sold into things. For instance, I'll just use myself as an example. I bought one of those real estate get rich quick things where, like, you all of a sudden you're just going to make all these millions of dollars, but then you buy the program and you realize this is actually hard work. This isn't like, and you have to get lucky to do it. But in your case, I want to speak to this a little bit because this kind of perked my ears, is that, like, look, I sold my truck to do this. You better be legit. Like, I'm going to work my ass off. Don't get me wrong, but like, this better work. I'm bet my whole life on it that this is going to work. This is going to work. Go to that for just a second, that piece to it. And then I guess, how'd you feel with that? I mean, that's literally, you're putting it all on the line.
Yeah.
What'd that feel like? And I guess talk about that first couple steps.
Well, I had a knee replacement and I didn't necessarily need my truck at the moment. And I really needed to do well. And I drove to CarMax and I was sitting in the parking lot at CarMax. There's chain link fence right in front of me and the main doors to the main office. And I was sitting there with my truck running. And I swear I sat there for like 5 minutes and I didn't tell my wife yet. And Nick had told me what the cost was. And, my truck was kind of like the only thing I had left without, I didn't have any cash. So I sat there and I was getting ready to go in and I thought, I'm going to call him one more time because if this guy skates on me and I don't have any wheels, I'm going to be super pissed. So I called him on the phone and he's like, man, if you do the work, like, it'll work. And I'm like, all right. And I'm like you, like, I'm a pretty positive thinking guy. And so when he said it's going to work, I put faith in it and thank God, he was legit. And so I walked in there, I handed my keys over. I got maybe $4,000 more than what my truck or what the cost of the Cabal was. And I wired it to him. I think as soon as the check cleared, I sent a wire to him. And when I left CarMax, I called my wife to see if she'd come pick me up. And that's how that went. And I had my knee replacement and I ended up going to Vegas about, maybe it was like, I don't know, 10 days or 8 days after knee replacement. I was told not to fly because, I could get a blood clot, which I did. But I went to Vegas and I went to one of Nick's events because, I just paid for this thing. And he said, if I do the thing, it'll work. And part of it was getting involved and going. And so I had a wheelchair and got to the airport, got on a plane, got a wheelchair at the hotel and did one of his events there and came back and just kept going. And the next year was a I did 50 to $53 million the next 12 months without knowing anybody, which is pretty cool.
I mean, brother, that's just such an epic story. We could like end the podcast right now and just like, hey, go join the Legion of Loan Officers. No, but that really is, that's such an inspiration because I think that a lot of people will get to the point where they might want to sell their car. And I mean, lucky Nick answered the phone because maybe you might not have sold it. But, but at the same time, I think that, take Nick answering the phone or not out of it. I think that a lot of times we have to take that leap of faith, and sometimes it's not going to work out. But it's not like it was easy either. I mean, you had to do the work. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I always compare it to lifting weights. Somebody can tell you what to do, and you can do the steps. Like I could go to the gym and I could lay on the bench press and I could push some weight around and go to the next thing and push some weight around. Or you can go to the gym and do the exact same thing with some heart.
Right.
And if you join the Legion and you just do the thing, but you don't do it with any resolve, it's not going to work. You got to go and you have to sweat. It's like you see people that clean a gun and then you see a guy in the military cleaning his firearm. It's the white glove thing. And there's a way to do things and then there's a way to do them right or to do them completely. And at that time I had to win. And so I did do it as completely as I could. And I did it with effort. And so, Nick can hand you the plan and, you have skills and you have tactics. And then, your skills is how well you sell and connect with people. And you got the tactics, the thing you do, and then you got the effort. In my opinion, those are the three things. So you can control the effort and you can find the tactics. If you can find the tactics, and then the only thing that's really missing is your skill level, in my opinion. And so I had the skills at that point to connect with people if I had the right tactics. Nick gave me the right tactics and I had the effort, and it worked out.
So I'm getting way ahead of myself with this. Generally, I like to go back to your come up story. And actually, you know what? No, I do. I want to dig deeper in this while we're on it. So do you think that you putting your whole life on the line, selling the only asset you had left, like you've said it actually two different ways, two different times, that like, look, I needed to make this work. Do you think if you didn't, you would have made it?
I believe you should pay for stuff 100%. Because the truth is, you can go on YouTube and you can learn anything. But if you don't pay for stuff, I will pay as much money as I have for things now. The more I pay, the better it is. Because if I'm really gaining some knowledge or experience, it's worth more than a few $1,000. And that money is, they say skin in the game or whatever, but that money is, that's your commitment. That's your contribution to figure something out. And it's like a relationship. If I get something for free, there's not much of a relationship there. But if I go deep in my pocket for something, it's like a marriage. You are sacrificing something for that. And so you hold it with more value. And I wouldn't want a good coach and not pay that person. If I was going to learn one thing from a coach and it was $10,000, which I've done before, it's worth it, because all it takes is doing one thing to make a huge, huge gain.
Brother, I love that. I mean, that's just pure fire. I think that a lot of times we try to discount this, but I mean, you're going to get what you put in. And I think that, like we were mentioning Amplify before, it's $6,000 to go. But you and I both know what kind of value do you get out of that? I mean, it's worth 10 times as much. Like you couldn't argue that. I mean, it's just like, it really is worth that. And that's cool, because I think that sometimes people get into situations where they do pay money and maybe they didn't put in all the effort, and then they bad talk the coach or whatever it was. But literally, I mean, someone giving you a roadmap and going to give you the time to show it to you. If you're not going to put in the effort on the same end, I don't know. I think you're right. I think it's better to pay that amount of money, pay the 10,000.
Yeah. What's even better, you mentioned Rene Rodriguez. First of all, he has a natural skill set that I've never seen anybody else have. And so I've been to Amplify, I paid the money, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. It's one of the only places I've gone to where, most of the time, if you go to these events, you have two kinds of value. You have the information you get, and then you have the people that you meet. But the information that you get, you rarely act on it because your behavior isn't necessarily changed or your belief system to where you can take that information and really expand on it. And so what was cool with Rene going to Amplify was, after I paid the money and had some changes, since you pay the money, you can go back and you can watch his YouTube videos. You have a greater appreciation for the free content too. It's not just the content you pay for, but at that point, the other stuff is more valuable as well. And I don't think you can watch one of Rene's YouTube videos without paying and really understand what a gift it is. I mean, it can be life-changing,
100%. He has a talent that is just unlike anyone I've ever seen. So, all right, we've done it. This has been like probably the longest intro I think I've ever had on the show. but there's so much I want to get into, like right up front. Just like these are big things, and we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. But the Get It Done podcast is really all about the come up story. We use Elon Musk as an example. He has a story from going from $1 million to $1 billion, and that's a great story. But what we're really looking at and focusing on is the 0 to $1 million story, the come up story. And hearing what I've already heard from you, I'm really pumped for this. So best place to start, Casey, is, where were you born? What would your parents do? What were your parents like? What were the first few years of your life like?
I was born in Oakdale, California, on a cattle ranch. My dad and mom on the ranch, they raised registered beef cattle, Angus and Brangus. And so my life, we got the mail 4 miles away from our house. It was pretty remote. That was our nearest neighbor as well. And so my life growing up was with my dad. followed him around and, kept his neck nice and cool in the summer when I was wearing diapers. And he was the hardest working individual I've ever known. And so that was my role model. And he did a lot of things that kind of shaped, I think, my work ethic. He would, as I've said before, he would drop me off somewhere, and he would let me fail. He would let me work. It was an interesting childhood, and so it was in a little ag town, and again, I didn't have any neighbors or kids or anything to play with, and so my life for me was just pretty much hanging out with my dad. My mom stayed home. She had the garden, took care of the house, made my clothes. There was no money growing up. It was all pretty much environment. And so we didn't really need any money either. So, my childhood was fishing and catching frogs and snakes and just stuff like that, just being a kid. So that was in Central California.
I love that. So an egg town, agricultural town. Your mom just made things for you. So like,
yeah, like my shirts and stuff like that. And, stuff out of the garden, beef off the ranch. We went to town maybe like once every week or 10 days kind of thing. So,
wow. I mean, like truly, you're basically living a life off the grid. I think that a lot of people and you're talking about it very highly. I think that a lot of people might think that's a negative, but man, I think there's a lot of people who just love that.
It was a great childhood.
Yeah, that's really cool. And, I've watched a little bit I think you even have this in the first episode of Real OLO, where your dad would just drop you off and say, all right, we're building a fence today, dig this hole. And then you'd struggle, to do it. And speak a little bit about that, because I think that's where I think a lot of failure started right there, or really just that, look, nobody's coming to save you.
Yeah, I forgot about that, but yeah, that's true. The ranch it probably had built maybe around 10 miles of fence on the ranch, and where the ranch was, there's hardpan, which once you get 2 or 3 inches under the ground, it was just rock. It was solid rock. And so we had these old canvas water bags, and they would stay kind of wet on the outside, and so the wind would blow on them and kind of keep them kind of cool. These little old school water bags. And I would have a pair of gloves. He'd drive out there on a tractor, drop me off, and I'd have a bar, pair of clamshells, gloves, and this water bag. And in Central California, it would be 95, 110 degrees. And with the hard pan, I'd only be able to dig maybe 2 holes a day. And so he would drive me out there and drop me off. And, and I was whatever, 10 years old up. And he'd drop me off and he'd leave. And then he'd come back maybe 3 or 4 hours later, 2-3 hours later, depending if he was irrigating or working close to where I was. And he'd come back and we'd sit there and he'd hand the water to me and I'd hand it back to him. And we'd sit there and just kind of look at this hole, because not much had been done. It's like this deep now, 3 hours later. And he would just look at it and say, man, that sucks. That's a bitch. That's a real bitch. And then I'd say, yeah. And he'd put the cork in the water thing and hang it up and get his ass on the tractor and he'd leave. And so I just kind of, there wasn't anywhere to go. There wasn't anybody coming to fix it. And knowing that it wasn't going to get fixed, stalling didn't make it go by faster. Stalling didn't make the job easier. And so pick the bar up and just keep going. And when you do that over and over and over again, the quitting thing, it's not egotistical. It's not like, oh, there's no quit in me. There wasn't any ability to quit. And so you get, it's kind of a muscle you develop. You just kind of learn nobody's coming and it's got to get done. And it's not an Instagram quote. It's not a Facebook quote. It's not cool. It's just, there wasn't another option. So it wasn't like I was tough or nothing. I just didn't have a choice. And so, but you get good at that. You get good at understanding you don't have a choice.
I don't know, bro. It's not that it's not a quotable thing. I think it's absolutely a captionable thing. It's just not sexy is really what it is. It's just it's a part of it. I mean, when you are in the mortgage industry, there's certain things you don't want to do. I mean, there's certain things that are just a part of it. There's certain things that look, are 10 miles long of fence. There's certain things that are look, I'm doing this with clamshells. Clamshells, not even a shovel.
Well, I couldn't even use clamshells, honestly. I don't know why you'd even give them to me, because it'd work for a couple inches. But then, you'd chip the rock and you take your gloves and you just kind of scoop out the dust that you chipped. It was miserable. It was absolutely miserable.
Oh my goodness. So like, okay, so like it's literally just solid. Like I'm in Wisconsin, so like we have a lot of rocks.
Yeah.
But, like the rocks, like mixed with it could be clay, it could be dirt, it could be a lot of different things. You're saying there's a solid rock.
Yeah, they used dynamite to put in our power poles to our house.
Oh my goodness.
That's the honest truth. Dynamite. They
Wow.
had 3 commercial augers that they broke in half, and after they did that, they just brought dynamite out to set poles up.
But send 11-year-old Casey out there with some clamshells.
Yeah, I probably wasn't doing 2 a day at 11, but by the time I was 16, I was out there all day long.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. And I think that, I mean, and you mentioned it today, and, you know, a lot here to mention Renee, if you remember it, there's probably a story there. And what a great story, because that's really, you talk a lot about it in your show, is that like, look, I'm a worker. You give me a goal, I'm going to go do it. And I think that a part of that stems from your early years of, you know, doing something that is really hard. I mean, and without that great of it's not an instant reward. It takes a long time and it's hard. So, I want to move forward to, wait, did your mom homeschool you? Was that?
No, I went to school.
Okay.
Town. Go ahead.
What was grade school like? Bring us to high school.
Yeah, the nearest town was about 12 miles away, and I went to school there all the way through high school. Played sports, you know, soccer and stuff like that. In high school, I did high school rodeo, and so, you know, agriculture and rodeo was part of my upbringing as well. When I graduated high school, I went to college at Fresno State. And then after Fresno, I went back to Oakdale, where I started lending. I actually started as an ag lender and then moved into residential real estate shortly after, a couple years after.
Take us back to high school. You say you had soccer, and I mean, I think a lot of people had soccer in here. I was just telling you, I had Brian Covey on, and he's literally like a professional soccer player. He's pretty
right. Yeah, I know Brian is.
a lot of us have played soccer before, but rodeo is cool. Like, I'm sure maybe you didn't think about it at the time, but I mean, it's definitely unique and different. Like when I picture rodeo, I picture like, okay, you're riding on a bull and like with a cowboy hat and like lassoing stuff. Said the guy who was no idea about it. So if I sound stupid, I'm sorry. I'm just ignorant. But what was that? What'd you do for rodeo?
It's actually an event called cutting, and it's where you take a horse and you go into a herd of cattle and you bring one out and you let go of the reins, and then the horse keeps the animal from getting back to the herd, and you're not allowed to rein the horse. Rodeo wasn't in FFA and 4-H. All those things were never anything I ever wanted to do. I mean, I was raised on a ranch, and I worked on the ranch 12 plus hours most of the time, and so doing the agriculture stuff with other kids was never anything I ever wanted to do. And but riding, cutting horses, my dad was a president of a couple different associations for cutting and things, and it was something that was pretty enjoyable. And so I did that most of the way through high school. But I didn't do any like rough stock events or, you know, the stuff that you normally see on a like professional rodeo circuit. My dad was a professional bareback and bareback rider. Sorry. And so, you know, I grew up riding tough horses, starting horses, you know, horses that were green. I would ride horses for other people, like, you know, get paid $300-400 a month to get horses started. And so I did enough rough stock stuff at my house that I didn't want to go anywhere else and do it again. So it was a pretty rough childhood, honestly. You know, my back's fused, fake knees. I've had multiple surgeries, and a lot of it came from just kind of getting beat up growing up.
Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, it seems rough. So in high school, did you have a job, or was your job basically what all the things you just mentioned, like riding horses for other people? I mean, it seems like it's a few $100. It seems fairly lucrative back in the day. I mean, right? I mean, that's probably better than any job you got.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd come home from high school, and I'd usually have a horse or two that I was riding for other ranchers or other people in town. And I would get, you know, $450 a month to ride a horse. So I might have a horse or two at any given time. And I worked all the way. I've always worked. So I either worked on the ranch, or as I got older and drove, I worked in town, or I would go to other ranchers' ranches, and I would help them do day work. They call it cowboy work, stuff like that. So go there and help them brand and rope and process cattle. So that was a part of that was just everyday stuff.
I mean, like a lot of times I ask people, what was your first job? Your first job's cowboy work. And I mean,
Yeah,
that's tough work. My goodness. I mean, I don't know many loan officers. We get kind of the, I don't know what you'd call it, but characterization, I guess, of like, we're all a bunch of prissy people wearing our Gucci robes. You know what I mean? But here's Casey coming up doing cowboy work. That's just, I mean, I couldn't imagine anything harder than this. Or I couldn't imagine harder work.
Yeah, I don't know the difference. It just was what it was. It definitely, it's, in all honesty, it wasn't that romantic. It was just a lot of work. So it's, everything's romantic when you look back on it. The only thing I miss is my dad. So my dad passed away a little over a year ago, and so that kind of sucks. But it is nice having all those memories, with somebody you respect and love so much, and that's, it's not so much the ranch and the work, but just like anything, right? It's the people that you're with. It's the people that you're with at work. It's the people that you're with at home. And that was my childhood afforded me the opportunity to be very close to my dad for a long time. And that was the big blessing.
And look at the legacy he left. He got to leave you. I mean, what a great. I mean, but truly though, I mean, that's a super cool thing.
That's really nice. Yeah.
What was your first car? I mean,
I had a yellow GMC stepside long bed. Picture a long bed stepside.
I can't.
It was the most heinous looking thing on the planet.
And it's yellow?
It was yellow, and the step was like this wide. It wasn't even one of those little cool steps. It was one of those wide steps. Yeah. And it said Lone Star Ranch on both doors. And we would try to go to Modesto, this bigger town, and cruise McHenry. That's where they filmed, I forget, American Graffiti. And so we tried to cruise in the big truck, and it didn't pull a lot of good attention. Let's just say that.
I mean, that's just so funny. But I mean, but whatever. If you're a kid, you're cruising the streets anyway with your hoopty, whatever it is.
Yeah.
At least you had a car. I mean, that's just the thing. Like but I'm sure a lot of other kids didn't have a job or weren't making any money. You probably had the most money out of anybody out of all your friends.
I don't remember. I didn't get paid much.
All right. Well, take us to I guess. How'd you do in school? I guess I always I generally like to answer that because I personally didn't do that well in school. I just barely graduated high school myself. But it's not because I wasn't smart, it's just because I hated it. I didn't like school personally. How'd you do?
I did poorly. In school.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I opened up first. I'm glad I could say.
Yeah, I didn't do well. We probably should just move on to the next one because
move on to the next one. Well,
that sums it up.
Well, look, I guess I was quoting this. I don't know who quotes this. Maybe I think it's Elon Musk. Actually, he says that it's the people that have the C averages that end up going on in life, starting companies that employ A averages. They're the owner of the company. And I don't think that could be any. I think that it couldn't be more true. And I mean, there's people that follow the rules, and there are people that are outside of the rules. And it's not that being outside the rules is always good. It's a double-edged sword. Like, I mean, you're not going to get good grades. That's not great.
Sure.
But you're not afraid to start a business. You're not afraid to go to a new town and be like, listen, in 90 days, I'm going to close $2 million. And I think it takes somebody that isn't going to follow the rules or I guess the norms. It's not necessarily the rules. It's not like you're lying, stealing, and cheating. No, we're going to do this honestly. We're going to do it the right way, but it's still hard. And it's something that's, I guess, difficult. And to kind of turn this into a question, we 3 times brought up Rene Rodriguez. This is the Rene Rodriguez show. I'm just going to say, but he talks about this a lot, that a lot of things that we do in our lives, we're either looking to honor our past or to heal our past. And it's a lot of times something that happened between the ages of 9 and 13. But for you, I think it's just your childhood in general. And I see that in what you're doing right now. I guess here, if I'm just going to say we in general are looking to heal our past or honor our past, how could you relate to that?
Yeah, you know what? We did not talk about this prior to the show, so it's really funny that you bring this up because Renee actually pinned me down at the dang Amplify, and he actually hammered me on this one. He's like, I told him, I forget. He asked me something like about my why, and I said, "Man, I don't have a why. I'm just like a cheetah. I get up and I just chase stuff." And he's like, "No, that's not true." And he got into it with me, but um, that's a really interesting question. I've had other people ask me that too. I think Nick even asked me, he's like, "Man, your dad's dead. Like, why are you working so hard now?" And I don't, I don't know. One answer to that is I don't feel like my dad's gone. So maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe I still have something that's kind of like still wanting to, show my dad that I'm a hardworking guy or whatever. I mean, I can understand that. But I don't feel like, I mean, I know he's dead and I know he's gone and all that, but I don't feel like his presence is gone within me. Not like in a spiritual way, I guess, but I just don't feel like he's gone. Like pretty much every Sunday when I'm walking around the house or doing something, I'm thinking, man, I wonder what my dad's doing today, wherever he is. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of how it feels, I guess. And so maybe if I feel that way, maybe I'm still trying to produce good results or something. I don't know. Even Renee had a hard time getting a solid answer out of me. So maybe I'm not self-reflective enough to figure that out, but I am wired to get up and, I'm a good soldier. If somebody says this has to get done, I'm pretty good at getting that, getting those things done, which makes partnering with Nick a really good thing because Nick has an aptitude for creating things and coming up with plans and just looking at things from a different metaverse kind of thing. He has a different angle. Nick smokes a lot and his brain is in places that mine isn't. So I'm more the foot soldier. And so I don't know. I'm pretty wired to work. So
here, Nick's a 1 in a million type of guy. I mean, there's nobody like that guy. He's a very, I don't want to say out there because that sounds like a jab. I mean, he's in a good way. I mean, he's a unique guy. I mean, to say the least. And with you saying like, listen, man, I'm just a cheetah. I wake up, and I chase stuff. And Nick saying, look, your dad's dead, and you feel like he's still there. I guess I have to ask this. I'm not a psychologist by any means, but I've suffered through times in my life where I've gone through grief. And the stages of grief are really messed up. I've struggled with myself, depression, bargaining. Bargaining is where like you think it's all like if I just did this, then it would come back. And a big part of it's denial. Do you think that you have any sense of maybe denial that he's gone, or I guess any of that? It doesn't seem like you have anything else, but maybe that.
No, I don't feel that way at all. I really don't. I feel, I feel the value, or I feel the work ethic that my dad had. I have a lot of value in that. I hold a lot of value in that. And I was on a podcast recently, or I forget. I was at a like a conference thing, and they said, "Hey, you can't change somebody's identity." And I was at that moment. This was pretty important to me. So I believe that you can't necessarily change somebody's identity, but what you can do is when you see somebody who's a certain thing and you point it out to them and put a name on it, I think you can bring that identity to life. And Nick Carpenter actually kind of did that with me when I joined the Legion and I had to make it. Nick ended up telling a bunch of people in the group and in the Legion, he's like, Casey's the guy that if I were to partner with somebody, he's going to go out and do what I say because his work ethic's so good. He works so hard. And I think Nick overtly stated that a lot, so much so that I started to even identify with it. And, I already had the work ethic in me, but when he started making it like vocal and telling everybody else, I felt like also I kind of wanted to live up to that. Like all of a sudden I had this identity of, Casey's just such a great worker, which a lot of people probably wouldn't even give a shit about. But for me, since my dad valued that as well, I was like, yeah, I am a good worker. And, there's times that I think I weigh in on that a little bit. And I'm like, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go do it because that's who I am. And I enjoy identifying with that because it's a value that my dad held very highly. So I'm not in denial that he's dead and gone. And I was happy the day he died. I was hoping that he would die sooner because it was an absolutely miserable last few days. And so him leaving was a good thing. And so I don't have any denial about that, but I think it's more of an identity thing. I do identify with being a hard worker.
I love that. I thank you for that. That's beautiful, man. I really love that. I want to take, okay, so like hard to transition that one, but I'm going to do my best to transition. Going back to college in Fresno, what'd you go for? Did you know you were going to go to college? If you did poorly in school, I personally, I was like, I'm not going to college, but you went to college. I mean,
yeah, yeah, I had good SAT scores. So I got in on my SAT scores. It was always just programmed that college was the next thing. So whenever I went there, I didn't know what I was going to go for. And I think that was why I did poorly, is I didn't have a carrot to chase after. So it was pretty much, beer bongs and fraternity and, and doing the Elon. You bring up Elon Musk and he said, it's not education. College isn't education or isn't needed because you can get whatever information you need off of YouTube. All of it. 100%. It's just a place to learn how to do your chores is what he said. And that was exactly what it was for me. I went there because it was the next step. I had homework to do. And so I did it half-assed and I didn't have any reason to take those classes. My last year in school, I ended up taking just a ton of units and I got great grades because I just wanted to get done and start making money. And so once I did have some sort of motivation, I did really well, but it was just the last year and I barely got through it, but I just didn't have a reason to go. It was definitely a waste of time. I wish I'd went in the military or done something that was better. And being in the military would have been a way better experience, a way better contribution, would have grown up with more resources and tools and skills. And that's a regret I have.
Well, remorse. I mean,
yeah,
maybe who you are. It's a piece of it. We're talking about it right now. And you got to live the college life. I'm sure at the time it was cool. I'm sure at the time it was fun. I mean, at least in an ounce. I never did it. So, I mean, I think that if you didn't, you would say the same thing, but opposite. Like, I never got to live that college life.
Maybe.
But you know what? I would agree, though. I mean, are you using your degree? And like, how long did it take you to pay off the debt? And, I agree. I don't think 90% of the people that go to college should. I think that if you're going to be a doctor or lawyer or astronaut, go to college. But if you're going to be, most people sell stuff, or an engineer, like go to college. Yep. Like I get it. There's certain things you got to go to college. 90% is an exaggeration. But most of us get out and sell stuff, and
for sure.
And wouldn't it have been better to go out and sell something on a lower level? So, okay, you get out of college, you're done with it. I'm hungry to make some money. Walk us to AG lending. Or agricultural lending.
Oh, yeah. When I got out of school, again, I was really driven to make money always, which is interesting because I went to college for 4 years. And when I left, I couldn't make money. And I am very wired I don't care about having money, but I'm super wired to try to chase it and get it. And so I think that was a pretty obvious disconnect on how poor college is, as far as giving you the tools to do that. But I left. Took a sales job selling, they were called Hour Power. So they're essentially burial plots. I'd go to people's house. I used this little card through the union. I'd make phone calls, say, hey, look, through the union, you get $1,000 life insurance policy. I just need to come by your house and I just need to have you sign for it kind of thing, but it's free. I'd get to their house and I had my little tricks and I'd say, hey, look, you got a table, can you grab me a pen? Can you grab a check? And so I learned how to get in people's houses and do some really low level sales in the beginning. And I absolutely hated it. I was really good. I would get a ton of people to sign up. And then the following day or the next couple of days, they'd call the home office and they'd cancel. So I didn't quite have the follow through, but I was quite the closer when I was little. So I did that. I hated it. And ultimately, I did a little fabrication work, didn't really know what to do. And then from there, I went to work for an ag bank, became a loan officer. I made like $1,900 a month and had benefits and a car, and I was making nothing. And they didn't want me to do anything. They just wanted me to sit there and work on revolving lines of credit. They didn't want me to go out and get new business. There was no way to make money. The manager told me he'd been there 25 years. He still wasn't making $100,000 a year. And the second I heard that, I started looking around. And a friend of mine was doing mortgage loans. He said he worked like 4 hours a week and he made like $90,000 in a year. And I thought, man, if you can do that, I can do that doing 8 hours a day or whatever. And so that's how I got into mortgage loans. And that was 21 years ago now. And when I went there, I hit the ground running, saw the broker. I said, what do I got to do? I want to make $200,000 a year. And he's sitting back then, we got our rate sheets on the fax machine, and we drove to people's house with a 1003. We'd fill out by hand. We'd fax in their lock request. We'd call to see if the lock got accepted before rates changed. It was back then. And so I did what the dude told me. He's like, you got to call this many people. He was from AmeriQuest. And so he was a call center guy. He's like, you make this many calls, you're going to get this many apps. This many will say yes. This many won't qualify. And he reverse engineered it. I came there with a phone book. I dialed the phone book. I did it. And then it was maybe my first 9 months, I made like 150,000. So I was right on pace for like 210. And I did exactly what he said. And that was, when we talked about the beginning of the show, the one other time somebody said, do this and it'll work. And that was, that guy told me what to do. And I came up underneath him. He showed me how to do loans the correct way and get complete 1003s and get the story and understand, the whole story. And that was a huge gift that I had, that even today I can get a lot of loans done or help people get loans done that, that most people can't. And it was just from having a good start.
Wow. That's incredible, because being in the industry for 21 years, the training in our industry is terrible. It's pretty much just like throw against the wall. You sound like you're good enough. I mean, you can pass the test. We'll throw you against the wall. And I mean, you had a guy that actually took you under his wing, taught you how to complete a 1003 the right way. And I mean, it doesn't surprise me with 4 hours he was making $90K, because he was doing it the right way. And brother, I love that when you mentioned NMLS numbers are in the 2 millions now. I mean, if you're in under 300,000, you remember, like if you're in the 2 millions, you couldn't even imagine a fax machine at all. But brother, don't you remember that? We used to literally fax everything in. And it was just like scan to email was kind of like a newer thing, but you'd get the rate sheets faxed to you. And like just before, like you'd be looking at Barry Habib's MMG and you'd be like, I'm sending in my, my lock sheet. And then like, you'd hope the confirmation comes in before the new rate sheet comes out. Yeah. And like, what a different day. What a different time.
Well, especially when the rates were on one side and all the guidelines were on the other.
And then all the hits. And then like you'd misread. Oh no, I missed this one. It's not like Optimal Blue where it's just all built in. And I mean, you have to learn the hard way, some of those things. I wanted to say too, so burial plots this is literally like Glengarry, Glen Ross. It's like, were they called sits? You'd have a sit and then there's the 3-day right of rescission. So like,
no, they were, it was called Our Power, and it was American Income Life was the company. And I still think they're around, but they were insurance policies for like $6,000, $9,000. And I would get a check for $100. So I'd sell one, and I got the first month's check, which was like $100, if they kept it. And so I would make 10 appointments a day. 2 wouldn't show up, 2 wouldn't qualify, 2 would say yes, 2 would say no. And the other 2 would like postpone or something. We had this math. And so I would sell 2 a day and make $200 a day. And that was, and then at night I would go and have to set 10 appointments for the next day. So I'd have 10 or 8 appointments for the day because 2 wouldn't show up. And then I would spend 3 hours at night setting appointments for the following day. And
brother, when you say that, dialing from the phone book doesn't sound half bad.
It wasn't. It wasn't. I was doing all right until I went to this one lady's house and I knocked on the door. She had a pretty nice house. She had money. And I said, yeah, I just need to come in and sign this or whatever. And I got her to the dinner table and I sat there with her and she looked at me like she kind of cared for me. And she goes, I really, really feel sorry for you. And she was earnest about it. She goes, I don't mean this as a put down, but I'm glad I'm not you. And when she told me that, I was done. I was done. It stung. She had like
Wow.
no respect for me for what I was doing, and I knew it inside. She just called me out on it, and it wasn't in a derogatory way. She just recognized that I was just doing something like somebody that cold calls you and tries to get you to send money to Pakistan because there's a Nairobi prince for $10 million that you got to get or whatever. It was miserable. It was miserable. I still remember.
I mean, the positive is that you at least got not afraid to talk to people. And I mean, I have to imagine that starting out being on a farm, working blue collar type of work. I mean, it's a skill to learn how to talk to people and to be more of the salesperson type, coming from like you couldn't get bluer than your collar was, you know?
Yeah.
So, okay. So I want to bring us to, so you started AmeriQuest way back in the day, and like, look, that's a long time to bring us to Ticket Mortgage, but any particular interesting stories before you come to Ticket Mortgage?
I'm sure there's a few, but
I mean, that's
yeah.
a terrible setup to that question. That's a terrible setup. I'm just going to kill myself right there. That was a terrible setup. But I guess, okay, what was your road to that? I mean, how many places did you work at between then and there? I mean, we're talking financial crisis, LO comp, everything changed.
If you were to look at my record, it looks like I've worked at 20 places, but the guy I started for, he ended up shutting down his corporation and working for a real estate company, and then they ended up changing names. And so there's about 4 of my employment records that is the same guy that I followed him through some changes. After about 10 years, I became a broker, and I was a broker for 7-8 years for myself. And then we ended up moving to Colorado. I took a little time off. I started racing drag cars, building drag cars. I took a couple of years off. I thought I was going to retire, and then realized that all my kids wanted to go to school, and I lost a bunch of money on race cars, and I had to get back into it. And so that was where the whole hero's journey story that I kind of pitched kind of came from, because I moved to Colorado and I had a 2-year gap. I burned my phone. I didn't answer any phone calls. And every relationship I had, everything was gone. And so even though I had a ton of experience, when I started back, I was starting fresh after being in an industry 17 years without having to restart. And so, when I started, we didn't have internet so much. I meant we had email and stuff, but things were on the fax. And so starting business back then and starting business now, it's a different animal. So that was the big shift. All right, now you're close to 50, you live in a new state, you have no contacts, and how do you get going? And so I was going to like realtor events and trying to shake hands, and one realtor's like, so what do you specialize in? I'm like, man, I've done like 4,000 loans. I don't need to specialize in shit. Like, give me a loan, I'll get it done. Like, I don't know what you need to hear, but I don't have these designations and stuff. Like, if it's a 1 to 4 unit property, I don't, government, whatever, I'll get it done. But they wanted some sort of sales pitch, and I didn't have a sales pitch. I didn't have a USP. I didn't have, something to differentiate myself and add value. And so meeting Nick was the turning point of me going, all right, you got to do it different. You need to listen to somebody. And, and Nick had a program saying, do these things and let's get them to come to you instead of you going to them, and change the hierarchy of the relationship. And when, just like on a sales call, if somebody calls you, you have probably a 70% greater chance of closing them than if you call them, if they'll even talk to you. So getting the inbound calls and inbound messages, inbound Facebook messages and things, that was where things really turned around. I hosted a class. I had 22 people come to the class, and 2 years later, I was still working with 10 of the agents from one class. And that what initiated having a really good year was doing the attraction marketing and not cold calling, not going after people.
Wow. I really love that story, especially the fact that it was literally you burned your phone. You had no more contacts.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, just to go to that point, I feel like in a way it's kind of freeing in some ways because like, I mean, here, if you close 4,000 loans, there's some valuable relationships that you let go for sure. But also like you kind of get to start over. You kind of like get to be completely new. I guess I'm sure maybe you didn't view it that way, or did you?
No, I didn't. I needed money. There was nothing sexy about it from my standpoint. I was running a house. I had lost a bunch of money on drag cars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I thought at any moment I could get back into the game and just get going. And so I felt fine. I felt great. Like whenever I decide to go back, I will. But when I went back, it didn't work. And that's when you get oh shit, like maybe I screwed up. Maybe that break was something that I'm not going to recover from. It came to that point. It came to that point so much so that I sat in a parking lot, like, all right, I'm going to get my truck up. Like, this is the last thing I can do. And I'm willing to do it. But if this doesn't work, Nick, like I'm done. And so I'm not saying I was at the bottom emotionally, but financially and desperate I was, very much so.
So, and I love how you do this. I mean, I look up to this. Like I'm genuinely trying to do the exact same thing. So I love that stat too.
Which one?
Well, if they call you, you're going to close 70% of the time.
Yeah.
And then you hosted a class, 22, 32 people. I forget the number, but you still work with 10 of them to this day. I think that's super powerful. I mean, why would you say that? Because here, I know a lot of people that run a real estate class, or do a Wisdom Wednesday, a lunch and learn, or whatever the heck you want to call it. There's all sorts of cheesy things that people call it, but whatever, teach their own. People are successful doing that. I'm not knocking that, and there's enough money for everybody out there, I guess. But to me, I personally don't think that's sexy or cool, or I'd want to be a part of that, in my personal opinion. And maybe that's pride. It probably is prideful if I'm just like self-reflecting a little bit on it. But I guess, what about a Legion of Loan Officers, event makes it special where you can say years later, these 10 people still are working with me?
Yeah. If you want to know, I'll tell you what I did on that class, which made it work really well. Since I didn't have any loans to work on and I knew how to generate leads, I ended up working like 8 hours a day trying to find buyers. And I actually had a handful of buyers. I had about 5 buyers in 1 month. And when I put the class together, and I don't know how I did this without violating arrest or anything else, but when I put the class together, I said, I'm going to have a drawing, and whoever wins the drawing in my class, I'm going to give you a buyer. And since I had been working these buyers so hard, 8 hours a day, calling leads and calling them back, which sucks, but that's all I could do. I ended up I knew that I could generate a buyer. So I went to that helped me get 22 people there, because getting people to a class in itself is very difficult. It's the hardest thing. Yeah. And so since I was there showing them how to do leads in that class and displaying like, I'm so good at this, I can just give away a buyer at will, that really built a lot of credibility for me. And I was able to do that because I could run the Facebook ads. Now, Facebook ads suck in and of itself. Leads suck in and of itself. But even if it costs you $10,000 to get a lead or to get a buyer, if you can use that to host a class and get a couple relationships out of it, or 10 in my case, that was probably a $500,000 class for me. I was able to take a month of grinding on the phone and convert it into $500,000 over 2 years, just from the one class. And that is the power of, Nick calls it the Costco chicken. Costco has a chicken, and they sell it for $4. It probably costs them $6 to set it out there. They lose $2. But when you go to Costco, you leave and you spend $200. You have to have some sort of lure that even if it costs you money, you use it to build a relationship. And this is one of the tools like we used in Colorado Springs. And it's one of the things I teach my guys. You need something of value. to somebody else, even if it costs you, to get the relationship going, because a real estate agent, relationship with a real estate agent, a decent one's probably $60,000 a year in income. So if it costs you $10,000 to get that relationship going, and you're good at what you do, and you deliver, and you close on time, and you're good at doing loans, then it's worth it. It's worth it to put in that time to help that agent.
Boy, I really love this. That's just, I hear the Costco chicken. You got to have that lure. And I mean, we could probably talk for an hour just about the classes that you do. But I want to be super respectful of your time, Casey. I want to just, I have a couple questions that I ask everybody. But before I go to those questions, I just want to bring us to, was this where you were, you're at Ticket Mortgage at that particular point? So you basically, you started there, and that's when you built everything?
Yeah, I started, once I met Nick, I ended up creating another brokerage called Ticket Mortgage Inc. And so I did that. I was working on my daughter's bedroom. We got started, got the classes, started making a little bit of money. I got an office, and I kept Ticket Inc. until this last year. And then we went direct, and we kept Ticket Mortgage as a DBA, and it's under American Financial Network, AFN. And we did that just because we wanted to grow, and we wanted a big company behind us. So we were able to scale with underwriting and just not have the bottlenecks of trying to grow a large brokerage, which is super difficult.
Right. 100%. 100%. That's very cool. Well, again, I want to be super respectful of your time, Casey. I've really loved this interview. I mean, what a come up story. This is literally what the show's all about. And, anybody listening to this, I'm sure, is taking a ton of value. So, okay. So there are a couple questions that I ask everybody. I want to make sure I get these out. So first one is this. Do you feel like you've ever had a big break?
Like a handout kind of thing, like a gift?
Like a big break. Like, hey man, there's this big, huge break, and this is what it was.
No, I feel like I've met some good people that I have the ability to see value in them, or to trust in them. And I'm going to say no, because I'm always looking for opportunity in pretty much, and you'll see this in the show. My thing is, like, when I go somewhere, I talk to somebody, like, I'm trying to find a way, like, is there some way I can help them? Is there some need that they have? And my ears are really acutely attuned to listen for people's pain points. And so I think that has developed over time. And I think that has allowed me to have a lot of breaks, because I'm looking for opportunities. I feel like there are opportunities around everybody every single day. And I think there's breaks available for people every single day. But you have to see them and also seize them. You have to be cognizant, like, hey, where's the value? Nick went to teach a class, and one person came, and it turned out as the guy that knew the mayor of 2 towns, and the dude introduced Nick to 2 mayors. And that is the kind of thing that when you need something to happen, or you're looking for an opportunity, like, there's every person you meet, every business you drive by, it's everywhere. And I would say that's my attitude towards looking for that, I think, has helped me find ways to help myself. But I don't remember anybody just opening doors saying, here, I'm going to give you this branch. You're walking into 20,000 a month, just run it. And I've never had any handouts like that. But it doesn't mean that I haven't been blessed, just with the people that I've come across.
Wow. I love that answer. That's really cool.
It was long.
Brother, that was like, no, man, I'm captioning that. That was cool. That was such a great answer to that question. I've asked it a lot of times. So, I mean, that really is a great answer. All right, next question. If you were to do it all over again, Casey, what would you change?
What I would do is, I know who I work with really well. I have an avatar, a model of a real estate agent that I've always worked well with, and there's reasons why. If I were to start over, I would identify that up front, so that all my messaging, all my marketing, everything I did was driven to that one specific person who I work with well. And that would avoid the other 90% of activities that are not going to produce the relationship I want. And that would allow me to work half as much and be twice as productive. And that's my best advice for anybody in sales.
Amen, man. Amen. I think we all struggle with that at some point. I think you have to make that have to suffer through that to realize it, though. I think that
the value.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Was there ever a time, Casey, you felt like giving up?
When I was in Colorado Springs and we did the show, at the end of the second month, I thought, and these fell out, but I ended up getting a few loans at the end of the second month that I thought was going to hit my number. And there were a couple nights when I thought, I kind of hit my 2 million. Yeah, I hadn't yet, but I thought if these go through, like, do I really need to stay here another month when I hit my number? I'm like, maybe, and I was lying to myself. I'm like, maybe that's a cool story. Like, he left a month early. He didn't even have to stay 3 months, but that was me copping out. That's what they call your bitch voice, right? And so I didn't think about it very long, but it was super miserable not being around my family and, and not being home and my normal life. And so that's at that, there were a few moments there when I thought I could come up with a reason why it's okay for me to leave. And, but I didn't, but it was definitely a prevalent thought for a couple of days.
For sure, man. That's awesome. I love it. All right. So the last question to set it up. There's a young Casey out there. And, maybe they're, growing up in an agricultural town. Maybe they're, building 10 miles of fence. Maybe they're, using, clamshells. Maybe they're, fishing, catching frogs, doing that type of stuff. Maybe they're driving a yellow GMC step-side long bed with Lone Star written on the side of it. Maybe they're traveling to a new town. Maybe they're, waking up every day as a cheetah, trying to chase stuff. Maybe they're trying to do something incredible. What advice would you give to someone looking to get it done?
I would try to get it done through people. So I would find somebody that either emulates what you want to be, has what you want to have, is running the type of business you want to run. And I would do anything you could to provide value to that person. So you could either work for them for free, or you could do some research on any way that you could help that person. And I would do that in combination with spend every amount of extra money that you have into your education so you can improve your skill set until you could have $1 million in the bank. Until you get $1 million in the bank sitting there, I would take any extra amount of money and I would invest in yourself with either sales training predominantly, and self-awareness and some psychology, and kind of understand how you tick. And I would just keep pumping money into yourself until you have a substantial amount of monthly income. I wouldn't put any money in stocks or Bitcoin or anything else, because the return on your own skill set will be guaranteed, and it's something that will never get taken away from you. So I'd find the person you want to be like, learn from them at all costs, and take anything you make and put it back into yourself. And I would do that as long as you can.
Woo-hoo-hoo, mic drop, Casey.
Bam.
Wow. I love that, brother. That was great. All right. Well, I want to thank our audience for joining us today. And I really especially want to thank Casey for coming on the show. And Casey, if someone was looking to check out your show, or they'd want to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, if you go to reloloshow.com, so relo like relocating loan officer, RELO, relo, yeah, reloshow.com. You can watch the 6 episodes. It is very good, by the way. It's entertaining. It's, docu-series / reality TV.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan. It's very well produced. It's very well put together. There's not another loan officer show like it, for sure. I love it. I enjoyed it. Anyway,
Yeah, almost got in
go
a
ahead.
fist fight on the show, all kinds of stuff. It gets pretty entertaining. So there's that. And then on Instagram, you can catch me at Relo LO Show also. So Relo LO Show.
Wonderful.
Instagram.
And look, we'll put a link to that in the podcast description. So, all right, this has been the Get It Done podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And if you've taken some value from today's show and you want to support us, write us a 5-star review, hit that subscribe button, tell a friend, and hey, open up Apple Podcasts, maybe scroll the way down to the bottom, tap that 5-star. That'd be really awesome of you. It just takes 10 seconds. So you just go ahead and do that. But anyway, all those things make a huge difference in helping us reach more people. Once again, I am Jimmy Ryan. This has been the Get It Done podcast. Thanks so much for listening.